Thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I know it's very tough to be the last session of the day after a very long day, so thank you for staying awake and staying here with us. I'm very happy to talk about designing technology by women for women. So you might ask, why do we need this panel? And I just want to touch on a couple things before I hand it off to do intros. Technology is really transforming our lives at a really rapid pace, as you know. But it's not designed by everybody, and it is not made for everybody's needs and uses. It's mostly created by privileged white males. So it might exclude women and underserved populations. So this is something that we just wanted to talk about. So one example, the founders of Flow, the #1 ovulation and fertility tracking app in the world, are 2 Belarusian men. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know how much they know about ovulation, but they came up with a great product, so they must know something. But why is this a problem? The women and underserved populations are the ones who actually need the technology the most and may benefit most from well-designed solutions. And so we need technology to be more inclusive. And I think we also have to make sure that the technology isn't reinforcing any kind of inequality or gender bias. So AI hiring tools favor male candidates because they are trained on biased data sets. So what we're trying to do is just think about how do we do this in a different way. And also, there's a couple other examples of how this can be dangerous. Speech recognition softwares are 70% more likely to understand male voices. So in an emergency situation when women are calling for help, the software does not always understand the higher pitched voices. Also, facial recognition software is less accurate for people with darker skin. So there's an error rate of 35% for darker skinned women compared to 0.8% for lighter skinned males. And this actually leads to misidentifications by local law enforcement. And then I think safety and medical simulations are often designed using male bodies. So famously, the initial automobile crash test dummies were made to represent the average adult male, in quotes, which maybe is around 77 kilograms, and didn't accurately account for female anatomical differences. So that could lead to significantly higher rates of injury and death for women in car accidents. So, as you know, technology is an amplifier. We've talked about this quite a bit over the last couple days. So I just really am pleased to have such a great panel here where we can talk a little about this. And I was going to mention something about Amrita, but I think Dr. Manisha in the last session did such a good job really articulating AMA's mandate about helping the most vulnerable populations. But that's why this is kind of imperative as well. So we have a wonderful panelist. I'm going to start with Ms. Geeta Kannan, who's the founder and CEO of Wequity, a company that looks at reducing barriers to exit for women in tech. Prior to this, Geeta spent 3 decades with companies such as Infosys and Wipro Systems. She's an entrepreneurial leader and a pioneer for women in IT movement in India with over 30 years of global experience spanning businesses, technology, and people. So let's welcome Ms. Geeta Kannan. Next, we have Dr. Eliza Kosoy, is the founder of Eliza Dolls, which are 18-inch patent-pending dolls that teach girls how to code and build hardware through custom tech-enabled project based on things that girls love. Eliza was recently a PhD student at UC Berkeley, working at the intersection of AI, UX, and child development with Professor Alison Gopnik. Eliza is an intern at Google DeepMind and was previously at MIT. Her parents are immigrants from the Ukraine. So let's welcome Dr. Eliza. Next, we have Ms. Navneet Kaur, who's the founder and CEO of Femtech India, host of the Femtech India podcast, and author of a book dedicated to women's health technology in India. She's also a member of the UNFPA Equity Alliance for 2030 to support companies working in science and technology. So please welcome Navneet. Dr. Chris Coley is the head of program for the Master in Science and Social and Data Science and Policy at Amrita University, Faridabad, under the School of Social and Behavioral Sciences. His research focuses on critical masculinities, women's empowerment, and the impact of multidimensional poverty on sustainable development. While at Amrita, Dr. Kohli has gained extensive experience in grassroots implementation, participatory approaches, and leveraging technology to empower women in rural areas. Thank you, Dr. Chris. And last but not least, we also have Ms. Beena Sarkar, who's the head of account growth and customer success for Fractal, and has 17 plus years of experience across CPG, sales, SaaS, customer success, and product management roles across multiple geographies and Fortune 500 clients. Welcome. So I have a panel who has like probably over 100 years of experience up here. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to say, but I want to leave some time for your questions from the audience as well. So I'll just ask a couple questions to get the ball rolling. So why is it essential to have women at the forefront of technology design and development? Gito, do you want to take that? Just make sure
Actually, I was talking to one of the founding members of Uber. And he was saying that the people who developed, who doesn't use Uber? Who's never heard of Uber? Any hands? All of you all have heard, okay. So he said that the entire tech team that developed, designed Uber were all male. And that's why when safety became an issue, and especially in the Indian market, they had no immediate solution. Because they never thought of safety at all. Because they are saying, I'm driven by a man, I'm picked up, I'm in a car, I'm safe with the other man in the car. They never thought of the fact that a lady would feel unsafe. And I think a lot of the things that they developed later, they said that if they had at least a single woman on their team, all this would have been incorporated from day one. And I think that's the power of having gender there for two reasons, right? One, having women on board is, yes, you get the women perspective. But the other thing is the fact that has come up repeatedly, especially saying that we have certain characteristics of being so empathetic. We are always thinking of being in other people's shoes. So in a way, we can design great products for men also. Because we know how men think. We will try to think like how men think. We try to be so much more inclusive. And I think that's why we need more women to develop products for women.
Chris, do you want to comment on this from the Amrita perspective as well?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I will do an inadequate job compared to Dr. Manisha, our provost, who I think beautifully put the Amrita perspective out to all of us, which is compassion-driven research and research that benefits society before anything else. We've been hearing from the beginning that technology is an amplifier, and this is often spoken in a negative sense, right? It can amplify existing biases. It can amplify the negative tendencies of our society. But it can also amplify the positive elements. Speaking from a social scientist perspective, who's interested in sustainable development, technology is also available to help us in our work, to help empower women, to help our existing projects, which are already successful in the short scale, to become scaled up, to reach the national and international impacts that we want it to. So in fact, by designing more appropriate technologies, by including the participation of women and other target groups in these sustainable development projects, in developing new technologies, emerging technologies that can be relevant for our sustainable development work, I think it will amplify our work, right? If we're going to reach the SDGs by 2030, which is seeming like a more and more impossible dream, we need technology. And we need a diversity in who is designing this technology so that it best reflects the needs of the population, right? And not just the desires of those creating it. So in short, that's kind of how I would say it.
Thank you. So the next question is, what's at stake if we fail to include women and underserved populations in technology design and development? Navneet, I thought maybe you could share some examples of the gaps in women health technology, and then we could pass the mic over to Beena to talk about the industry consequences of inequities, and Eliza could maybe talk about her research on AI and child development, so we could maybe go like that.
Sure. So women's health, is it on? Yeah. Women's health been historically underrepresented, underfunded. The reason we need to include women in the design when we're building for especially women's health, which is empathy driven and very sensitive health topic. Only women were only part of clinical trials. 22% of research or women are being part of clinical trials, which means that women experience more adverse reaction to the medicine which comes out in the market, which also means that they get 4 years of delayed in diagnostic, and they ended up in 25% of poor health than men. So, which means like, if we can fill this gap in women's health overall, which is $1 trillion market, which is a big opportunity for the global economy, that's one. And I would say second, why it matters is, we need to have women in design, we need to have women in research, at the coding, at decision-making levels. So I would say diversity across to build better health access for everyone.
Yeah, just from the industry perspective, just to quote a stat, since Aarti very nicely put those stats over there, right? We have 44% women entering STEM, and finally in leadership you have 13%, maybe 7% who reach to the top. So what happens over there is decision making on what should be the problem that needs to be tackled first. The prioritization of the problems automatically goes down in terms, and why and generally in terms of overall society, because you have women who not only look after, okay, it's one thing that you have your own stuff to look after, your own family, more often than not, maybe in the urban areas you also have the second half, our partners also pitching in currently. But more often than not, you have us looking after our parents. Most of the childbearing duties come on to us. So society and community building typically starts in especially rural areas with us. So when you have people at the top who do not look at a community perspective, and if the majority are in that mode, then the problems that you're trying to solve automatically become completely focused towards in one direction. So I think that's where representation and leadership matters, especially in industry, because what are you trying to solve? Especially since we are in a technology conference. Gen AI is the name of the game, everybody talks about it. What are you trying to solve with Gen AI? Are you trying to solve for age? I don't know if that's the right problem to solve for. We have other problems like climate change to solve for. Are we using our heads towards that space? How are we tackling community issues, right? Are we using technology for a larger purpose? That automatically, that prioritization is what gets lost if you do not have representation in the industry on top, right? So that becomes a big issue.
Great, thank you. And Eliza, would you like to talk a little bit about your research on AI and child development?
Sure. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay. So my research focuses on how children, mostly youth, interact with AI, which is something we need to be thinking about. And I don't know the stats for India, so maybe we can take a little poll. Who here lives in India and uses AI kind of on a daily basis? Let's see. Okay, now, almost everyone. Who has children and you think, or are you probably pretty confident your children are using AI? Okay, a couple. Well, they're going to be. It's coming. In the US and studies I've been doing, it's like 75% of kids ages 5 to 12 are already using AI. And maybe that scares you, maybe that's exciting, but basically what I like to think about is how can we make it safe for them? How can we, create solutions that are good for kids using AI? I think, they're not just like cheating, they're doing like constructive, cool things. How can we study that? And What does it mean for society that there's this whole new novel technology coming in that children and youth are more comfortable with, and older generations are maybe a bit more apprehensive towards it? And yeah, so that's kind of what I think about. And if you think about it, who do you really want designing the AI for your children? Probably not a group of men, probably like a nice diverse group with women in the room leading those research efforts, because that's going to be the future. So yeah, that's what I think about.
I just wanted to ask you, because you said something to me the other day in the bus when we were talking a little bit about what happens to girls already at 8 about math and STEM and messaging, and kind of why you came up with the value prop of your product, for young girls.
Yeah, so I've been working on this startup called Eliza Dolls. They're called Eliza because the first AI chatbot was named Eliza. It's not named after me, it's a deep cut. Now you know. And yeah, so what I'm trying to do is introduce girls from a very young age, girls or anyone that's interested in more like dolls and things like that versus more of the like stereotypical male like race cars or whatever robot coding toys. So it's a doll coding toy that exposes girls from an early age. Basically, it shows them like how to code hardware and software, but extends through their doll play that they would already be doing. So it's like a sneaky way almost to introduce them to coding. But why it's so important is that around age 8 already, there's tons of studies that show that girls are already associating all kinds of terrible bias about themselves, where they think like, oh, I don't want to do math, boys do math. So it's super, super important that before the ripe age of 8 already for girls, you're exposing them to experiences where they're happy with technology. It's just something that they like. For example, maybe that's dolls, if that's what they like let them play with it. And you can embed technology into that and just kind of plant the seed of confidence from an early age. So as they get older, it's like, oh yeah, coding, that's for me. I've been coding my doll since I was a kid. It should feel effortless like that, and not just like, oh no, I didn't want to play with that robot, but my brother played with it or something like that. I hear that a lot. So that's what we were talking about on the bus at 2 a.m. the other day.
Was it 2 a.m.? No,
felt
like
it.
Okay, what barriers do women face in the tech industry, both as developers and users of technology? So I wanted maybe Geeta, and then you can pass the mic over to Navneet.
I'll just give the broad I call it the 4 M's and the C. The reason why there seems to be less and less women as you grow up the ladder. And my 4 M's are, first it starts with marriage. So you have a reason to drop off the workforce because of marriage. The second M you have is you have maternity. So you have another reason why you want to drop off the workforce. The third M is motherhood. And I'm differentiating motherhood from maternity mainly because you want to stay back after the kid is 2 or 3 and 4 and want to stay on in the house. So you've got your third M. The fourth M, which is coming into play because a lot of us senior women are in existence today, is menopause. Because of that, people are getting off the workforce. And the fifth one is taking care of someone else, the C. So this is like an Einstein formula, I felt. It's 4 M's and a C, right? And that's Geeta's formula. So it's Geeta Gyan for you. Because if we can conquer this 4 M's and the C, I think we've got the, being engineering mindset, you need the root cause analysis. And if you can do it, you've conquered the reason why people are dropping off from the pipeline. And I pass it on before I talk too much.
So Navneet, maybe you can talk a little bit about the barriers in femtech and women's health innovation.
Yeah. I think the main reason for women's health has been like the funding, of course. The less than 2% of funding goes to women's health tech. The reason behind this, the founders who are building in the space, they're still trying to validate the market. The second is, there's a lot of stigma and taboo around these topics. As I said, it's very empathy driven. So when you're building for countries like India, how do you build better health access for women, not just in tier 1 cities, but also giving access to women who are in rural India, right? If we look at the data points, like Geeta Madam has explained everything pretty much, what are the barriers for women, but since I work with a lot of founders and we also work with global companies, you mentioned Flow Health, and I want to add here because we are working with Flow Health on Pass It On project in India, and I know it is the companies founded by male founders, but they also have a medical team which was from Anna. I have done podcasts with her, and we had a very deep conversation about, and she growing up from Eastern Europe, and what was her part of building the company and how did they understand the health. So I think for me that I feel as long as we're building better health access, honestly, as a woman, I don't care who's building it, as long as they have women in the team, right? And the idea is they created such a better health access for women, not just in the Europe or UK market, but also countries like India, because I think they have more than 2 to 3 million users in India, active users without even any marketing or anything. So which means that women do want technology, they do want to understand. Third is I feel education and awareness is one of the biggest gap. Even in women who are in, probably like my age, they're probably earning 6-figure salaries and they don't know about health at all. So which is not typically we've been taught in our families, or we ever discussed in sitting in families like about menstruation or periods, right? So I think that's also gap that if we can break the stigma, so of course the companies who are building, they can create better health access and people can access technology very easily. So I think these are the 3 gaps I see overall. And shockingly, if you look at numbers, like women are like 80% driving consumer spending, right? And the funding is only 2%, and which is crazy that how can we collectively work on that? And I think that's what we trying to do, and of course the companies who are working in the space overall. So I think of course the platforms like these has a big contribution, giving places like people like us who are building, plus also giving access to students and understanding what is the role of technology, how they can access health, how they can use it. So it's overall value chain we need to build strong in the ecosystem.
Great, thank you so much. So I just wanted to see, are there any questions right now from the audience? I have some other questions, but I just wanted to open it up for a minute if anyone has any questions so far. I have one question in the back, in the far back. Yes, but she's coming with the mic.
I just have a one question that I work with the rural communities, primarily with the trafficking survivors. And when we work with the rural communities, we see technology has a minimum penetration there. I keep on hearing about the stories of urban women. I just want to understand that there's a larger section of women lives in the rural pocket.
Yes,
And
that was going to be the next question. That's perfect.
yeah, and right now I see basics of WhatsApp in the name of technology, or YouTube on the name of technology, and few UPI transactions or Google Pay transactions. So apart from being just the user of it, I don't see much of them contributing towards it, especially about the rural women. So I want to understand from the panel that how you think that the rural women could be included in this entire process of technology. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to ask Chris if you want to take that, and then I think Gita also has the mic, so maybe you guys can both answer that. And in addition, the specific challenge that are faced by rural women and women with low literacy in accessing and using the technology as well.
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely. This has been on our mind at Amrita from the beginning. Speaking from the Amachi Labs and the Center for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality, which is one of Amrita's centers of excellence, led by our director, Dr. Bhavani, who I'm sure all of you know. Since 2009, we've been trying to develop computerized and technology-enhanced vocational training or job skills training, along with other empowerment efforts, life skills, financial inclusion, etc., through the self-help group framework primarily. Since then, we've also branched out to other primarily rural and village areas, including men and boys. Excuse me, but the challenges remain. When we first enter these communities, the first reaction by primarily the women is one of fear. We don't want to touch these tablets, these computers. We're afraid we might break them. This is a direct quote that we get almost 100% of the time. In actuality, once we get to know, we build a rapport with these communities, we understand that there's a sense that this is not for us. This technology, these tools you're bringing are not for us. Either because they're too complicated or it's almost like an alien technology, especially for those women who are considered digitally illiterate, but actually just underexposed, not exposed to technology from an early age. This hinders their use of these more advanced technologies that require a basic understanding of things like WhatsApp and email, which we might consider basic. But for somebody who has never even owned a cell phone, much less a computer, much less gone to a school which used education technology, these are completely foreign ideas. So what we have tried to do to try to answer this question is to think about ways that technology can be as low stakes as possible for entry, right? So developing applications and tools and platforms that are language independent. I'm sure most of you know when you get a new cell phone, everything's in English. The keyboard is in English. All of the app descriptions are in English. You're lucky if it's in Hindi or some other local language. But even to toggle the language settings requires some basic language skills and an ability to navigate a complex system. So making the stakes of entry as low as possible helps to introduce these populations that don't have a familiarity with technology into these kind of more complex systems. Working along with our target populations, we have some people from the Amrita School of Sustainable Futures. Us at Center for Women's Empowerment, we're also really emphasizing a participatory approach, right? Working alongside our target populations to develop solutions that are meaningful to them, to overcome this fear, this sense that this is not for me, right? To make it relevant. Talking about healthcare apps for women's health and other things, this is clearly relevant for a female population. But when it comes to economic empowerment, vocational skills, you still have this sense that it's not for me, right? So if we can overcome that barrier and say, no, this is not just for one population, it's a universal acceptance, and you can easily access this technology. I think overcoming that hurdle has been one of the proudest things that we can say that we've accomplished in our new education tools and everything. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Geeta, did you want to say something on that?
I was just wanted to say that we do something for the on that side of the space where, you know, there is a whole women entrepreneurship program that is run by the government of India. And you know, we take part, and we had somebody coming in from a very remote location in one of the eastern states. And the advice given to her was, you're going to run a beauty, can you help me with that word? A beauty parlor. And so the person advising her was saying, you've just become part of Urban Clap. And I said, Urban Clap is something that is only relevant to the metro cities. Nobody anywhere outside. Urban Clap, by the way, is just a loose conglomeration of services that is given under an umbrella, which is like you can get a plumber, you can get a carpenter, you can get some cleaning services. But this person never even heard of it, but that's the advice she got. So we try to go out to all the entrepreneurs, and we are trying to develop in such a way we're saying, if someone gives you some advice, you can come back to us for the technical solution. You don't break your head about what people are saying about do this, do that, or even having a WhatsApp business account. Don't worry, we will walk you through it and conquer your fear, because I think the base root of everything that's happening from a rural to, you know, a technical kind of knowledge is they have a base fear of what the unknown is. So we have to give them that confidence and that fear. And then after that, I think we are not needed. That's one thing we do. We also work with rural underprivileged children where we have a mentoring work platform that is in use, where we have corporate women talking to these underprivileged girl children, trying to get them. In fact, we hope to see the corporate mentor to be with them for 4 years, but we've got only a 1 year kind of commitment from them. But they are assessed. There is a dashboard. There's a way to look at whether the mentor is good enough. The mentee also gives feedback. But it's a way that anything you want to ask. I think previously we saw, no, you take my belief till you get your own belief. So we're doing it in that kind of way. It's saying that the mentor's thoughts, actions, experiences at least carry forwards, to that underprivileged child. And they will then get that confidence and get a job. That's the ultimate goal.
Great, thank you. So let's toggle a little bit to solutions and innovations. So what are some successful models of technology that are designed by women? And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about this, Eliza, about how, Eliza dolls can be adapted to empower girls in underserved areas. And maybe Navneet can highlight some health things.
Well, I think the first question was, what are examples of technology created by women, right? Yeah. So my favorite AI pioneer is a woman named Dr. Fei Li. Has you guys heard of her here? Stanford. She's a Stanford professor, but pretty much like the godmother of computer vision and AI, and like I feel like today's modern day algorithms and actual like practical uses in the space would be nowhere without her work. And she just wrote a book that I really like called The Worlds I See, and she comes from a really poor immigrant background, and the story is so good and inspiring. But there's a million examples, right, of women in technology, but that's just my favorite that's relevant for AI today. And then what was the second part?
Oh, just about, initiatives like even Eliza dolls could be adapted to empower girls in underserved areas, like rural areas or underserved areas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think for rural areas, it'd be really, really interesting to try and deploy various types of toys. Probably would need to be like adapted to more to what girls are playing with in those spaces. Like I'm less familiar, that would be really interesting. So like, what's a toy? Did you grow up in India? What was a toy that you played with? Climb trees. Okay, so maybe some kind of like AI tree accessory could teach you something. I don't know. Like, dolls too.
Bina, do you want to say something?
No. So I think the start of technology, if one has to be exposed, it has to start with logic and logic building. And I think logic building there are enough games that we play out there, which currently, again, it's also cultural, right? So how many of our girls go out and play? So I think creating, it starts with creating safe spaces. How do you design a playground so that girls start engaging in play? And there are enough games that we play. We have our Indian games like Coco, we have Gillies and Up. There are many such games that we play. The idea is to build logic, so logic-based games. And in fact, I know that the government is in places where we have mobile towers and we have reach. They do have tablets that are sent out, and you have a basic game called as Scratch. It's as simple as how many steps do you need for this monkey to go from this place to that place, and they're not supposed to do, they're supposed to take only 2 hops, 2 jumps. So it's building logic. So once you build that in a fun manner, in an accessible manner, as I said, in places where you have mobile penetration, then, and I've seen that work in certain Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Rural areas, not so much, but yeah.
Permission to follow up. So Scratch, which is like this coding language which exposes children to coding where they drag blocks, something that I found in my research, and other research has seen that actually girls don't like that as much. Girls actually prefer like physical play in which they do like role playing. That's really important for them. And That's part of the reason why programs like Scratch don't really work for girls sometimes, because it's just the software basically, and it's not giving them that physical thing they can see that's tangible that they play with. So I think it's really important to think through like what are their unique play patterns and how can we meet their needs. And with coding and Scratch, that's why I do the doll, because they can still do that pretend play, but you're embedding in that need for the software to make it work or something like that. And I think it's super important. And so it's like logic, but in a way that's cool and fun for them, I think is important. Yeah.
The marriage of logic and play. And Navneet, do you want to highlight some femtech indie examples where you're targeting rural health and any challenges, but solutions that you're coming up for to meet those challenges?
Yeah, so we do a lot of education work, especially as I said, one of the biggest gap is education gap. Even though many girls have access to technology, but they don't know how to use that. So of course we are not non-profit as well. I was very passionate about healthcare, and even my background is not from health, or I don't have any tech background. So I was very passionate about, and because of growing up my own challenges, and I wanted to start something. And we are proud to say that we are India's first largest network of founders who started, and we spotlighted women's health conversations at the forefront where nobody was talking about women's health, not even investors. So the idea was how to bring everyone together. So if I look at what impact we have done, so of course as I said, one of our partnerships is with Flow Health, which they have free access for Android users in India to the premium version. So which means that all the girls who have Android phone, they can download Flow app and get premium version for free, which means they can not just track their periods, but also get access to better data health insights, right? So they can just track everything. And I think that partnership has impacted, we have already reached more than 1 million women in 4 months. And that has been game changer, because I've literally been, thank you. I've literally been to North India, and this is my first talk with 400 girls in one of the universities, and all these girls are data analytics students. And when I got down from the stage, because I spoke in little local language as well, because that's my mother tongue, because I wanted them to feel that I'm one of them and they can be vulnerable. And when I got down, of course I was teaching them about how they can access technology, and so many girls came to me because they are like, our parents are not educated, they have health problems, so they cannot go and tell her mother. So, and they were like, we want to do something, but we just don't have that. So I feel there is so much demand that India is growing. We are world largest demographic power, 640 million women, such a big market size. The only barrier is stopping us. How can we build we have a technology, how can we build for women who just don't understand technology, right? And that was one of our our collaboration with Flow, that what we are trying to fill gap, healthcare literacy gap in rural India. And I think overall, I think, when I talk about the innovations in femtech space, Nirmaya Health is one of my favorite. And her name is also Geeta, the founder. She's been great support to me. We've also done podcasts together. So she has built AI breast scanning tool for women. And in fact, she also mentioned the same thing, because they do free breast screening for rural India, and girls don't come and take the screening because they don't understand that. So I think that's the education gap. Even if you're trying to give free access, they don't have the knowledge. So how can we do that? So our core mission at the ground level is that how can we fill that education gap? And I feel now the new generation of women, they want to understand more, and I think that's why the conversation, the topic has to be spotlighted like any other industry, that why women's health matter, and why we all of us doing.
Great, thank you. So question for Chris and Beena. How can we really effectively involve these rural women then, or women with low literacy at the grassroots level, to really get them to have that usability and accessibility of technology? Because I think to, what Navneet's saying, it's education, awareness, access, but I also heard, I don't know if this is true, and this might be a little off topic because it's not technical, but that Amma had sent, kind of plumbers out to put in toilets. And in the toilets, instead of using the toilet so they don't have to go out in the field and be exposed and be at risk, that they're making it their puja room because it's the most beautiful thing. So, I mean, like, this is like a big shift for them. So, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Of course. So the issue of this is quite profound, right? This is not an easy solution. We call this a wicked problem, right? That doesn't have a clear answer, possibly impossible answer. But this kind of drills down at the end of the day to the social dynamics, the cultural dynamics, the way power is distributed in a community, who makes the decisions, who decides how the family will run. And in many communities, especially in rural India where we work, we see that the power dynamic often rests with the head of the family, which happens to be the man. However, there's a sense of change palpable across the world and even in the villages in India where opportunities are there. It just takes a bit of fearlessness to reach out and grab them. And what we found works the best, and bringing up the sanitation project that we had, along with the Government of India's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan scheme, which was to promote the end of open defecation in India, promote sanitation, health and hygiene, along with the UN WASH program. We developed a program to empower women to build their own toilets and also promote sanitation in their communities. This was because we were already teaching vocational trades, as I mentioned before. And it was a short leap to then say, well, let's build a course on how to build your own toilet. So with the basics of masonry, the basics of plumbing, and the basics of plastering, anybody can build their own toilet. And especially in rural communities, the pit-style toilet was enough. You didn't need some advanced plumbing. So over the course of 3 or 4 years, we empowered some 300 to 400 self-help groups to build their own toilets for their community and thereby gain an employable skill so they could enter the formal labor market as an employed construction carpenter, etc. And this was profound for many ways. First of all, the family gets a toilet. So check 1, sanitation has improved. The second thing was that it demonstrated to the women themselves that they were capable of solving a problem that affected the entire community. Now, we all know that women solve all of our problems anyway, but it's often behind the scenes, right? It's an unspoken, almost an accepted reality that, she'll raise the children, take care of the elderly, cook our food, take care of us when we're sick. Basically, without her, we'll die, but it's assumed. But now we had something that was traditionally in the public, the male space, right? New infrastructure was because these women are empowered to do it. So the women saw themselves as contributors in a very visible way to their community. The community themselves started seeing the Women's Self-Help Group as a leadership, right? They were aligned with a Government of India initiative. They were gaining political power and influence and decision-making. So it was starting to shift this fundamental power dynamic in the village. Now, it's all not, rainbows and happy suns and stars and all of that. There is pushback. When power dynamics shift, when people who were in power start to feel their power being diminished, there is always some fear and anxiety. So now our effort is to kind of work with the larger community and the government to support an entire systems thinking shift around women's empowerment. Not just to empower women and girls to achieve their dreams, to have greater autonomy, but to encourage the community to recognize this as an inherent good, an intrinsic good. And thereby, we're creating like a community empowerment. Our director, Dr. Bhavani, always says that it's only an empowered man that can help an empowered woman. And I truly believe that the sense that empowerment is not about gaining power over others, but about enjoying power with each other to achieve joint goals. And I think designing technology that can put women's service already what they're doing, celebrating that and making that into a public visible space is a way to shift that narrative and make it a reality. I love this thing that only 2% of national funds is going towards women's health initiatives. Globally, not just in India. And if you look at the Indian national budget towards gender programs, it's peanuts. And yet the demand is there. right? It doesn't make any business sense at all to ignore or to underfund the greatest demand that there is. Consumer drive is coming from the female side of the population. So why are we not emphasizing this? So from so many different avenues, we have an argument, we have a call to action to make this happen.
Great, thank you so much. Veena, do you want to comment on that as well, or?
No, I think he's covered most of it. But I think what happens is when you build technology, like for example, there was this, I was speaking to a friend of mine, and she works with self-help groups. And they had tied up with corporates. And most, as he said, very rightly pointed out, most of the purchasing for the household happens with women, because they are the ones who say, okay, we are running out of say, simple stuff like washing powder or, even the groceries. All of that decision of what needs to be bought for the house is done by the woman. So earlier what used to happen is they are tied up with corporates, and they used to have this mobile app. And it would be a big corporate house, say HUL in this case, Unilever, right? So you would put in products saying that this is what this village needs, because it used to pull in demand from the various households in that rural area. So that mobile phone was given to the lady of the house. So initially there was a lot of resistance by the man of the house saying, and because the general messaging was, you give technology to women, she will run away from the house, right? But what happened was, interestingly, because they were placing, pooling the demand, so to speak, for a particular corporate house, in this case HUL, they were also getting a sales commission. So income was coming in. So earlier, again, that was a problem, just to reflect, on what Mr. Cohen said, that the moment the power dynamics shift, then that also becomes a problem. That, okay, suddenly the woman the house is earning, is that a good thing? What changed everything was the pandemic. So what happened with the pandemic was, earlier you had both parties earning. The men used to go out and earn, and in this case, the lady was with the mobile phone in the house. With the pandemic, he could not go out to work. What's the source of income? But you still need to run the house. So the woman was still in the house, talking about what they need to run the house, and they were still getting their commission. So that way it was a win-win. And that's when they realized, so it took a pandemic to bring that social change. For that matter, even for us in urban areas, many people said, okay, why do we need work from home? Why do you need remote working? The participation by women that rose during that period, simply because it offered that flexibility, right? That also the pandemic actually showed that you are able to manage both, right? So it required something as bad as that to show that technology is not bad. It's actually an enabler of economic progress for the household. So I just gave two examples of rural and urban on how it changed, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Well, I wanted to make sure that we have time for questions from the audience. So I'll ask this last question, and maybe any of the panelists can give some actionable points. What practical advice would you give to the audience to contribute to more inclusive technology design for both rural and low literacy women? Anyone want to start? Yeah, feel free.
I'll just start so that you can all start thinking of what you want to say, right? I'm generous and inclusive that way. I think one of the things that Amma says a lot about it is of love and compassion, but if you translate it into, if you're designing technology, if you can respect every individual, because we talk a lot about gender, but when I'm sitting up here, you might see me as a woman, but there might be all other kinds of things going on in me because of my intersectionality. I might be neurodiverse, I might be on an autism scale. In fact, I'm colorblind, so I can't see the difference between certain colors. I'm also of a certain generation. I mean Gen Z, but if you see otherwise, that's your problem because you have eyesight issues. All those things are all in me, right? And then, but you look at me and just say, oh, she's a woman. So don't ever design technology with one aspect in mind. You have to think of it as a diamond. It has multiple facets. And if you can polish all those facets, you'll get a beautiful diamond ring. Right? And propose probably to the partner of your choice, but yes. Now,
Anyone want to go next?
no, you've been listening to me and not forming your thoughts.
Okay, I have random feedback or random advice. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. But I think everyone should be a DD, which stands for a delusional dreamer, which means like no matter what you think about or care about and who you are, like you really go deep into thinking about that. And I think that is a good way to like push things forward. And we all just kind of really dream and go deep into our research topic or whatever we think we're meant to be doing here. I don't know. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Navneet?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned, but I would say that, of course, include everyone. Whatever you're building in technology, right, could be healthcare or could be any other sector. Second, also look at affordability segment if you're looking for large models, which is typically, markets like India, where we have a lot of rural population. So how everyone can have access. So I would say affordability and, a representation of women in the sector.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to what the great points over here, I think paying it forward is extremely important. So there are many of us who are here, I mean, all of us here on the stage, we are here because of a lot of circumstances, like Dr. Meenakshi said. So there are many allies who helped us get here, acknowledging those allies and plus lifting people who are around us. And it's not just, I know this because I thought I was not able to do a certain, especially after I became a mother, I felt that maybe I'm not able to do certain things. But just by seeing another, one of my friends do it, she offered a solution to me, right? So I think that power of allyship as well as mentoring is extremely important. So pay it forward is what I would say. All of you are extremely privileged to be here, to be in this fabulous institute. So that itself is a privilege. So I would say, and especially since you are working in the social space, since you're over here, paying it forward is very important in however small way. Even when you're interacting with any person, it can be your batchmate, it could be the person who's helping you with your household work, your house help. Just pay it forward. Just seeing you would be an inspiration for them that this can happen and enable it for them.
Great, thank you. Chris?
Bina took the words right out of my mouth because it's exactly that. We have the privilege and the opportunity to be mentors for so many people who are like the mentors we had. And if I could embarrass or celebrate my colleagues, people like Ashwati, like Amrita, like Professor Gayatri, Sri Vidya, these technology experts who we work with, who go into the villages all of the time for their research. Just them being there, being willing to share their expertise, their knowledge, their resources with these communities, it breaks the ice. That thing of, this is not for me, I am not allowed to pursue such a career, is completely shattered because you see proof that it's not only possible, it can be celebrated, it can be exciting. And so I think, not just for the women in the audience, but for also the men, taking your role as a future mentor very seriously and inspiring everyone around you and fearlessly pursuing your career, no matter what people say, especially if you're in the STEM and the technology sector. If people are saying it's not for you, then you can tell them where to stick it. And just pursue it, because I have been inspired by people, and you are the inspiration for others.